They stayed silent, until now. Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, once fixtures of royal tradition, are no longer playing by the palace's rules. Behind the pomp and protocol lies a story of exile, betrayal, and whispered secrets. From Jeffrey Epstein's shadow to Royal Lodge's eviction, the Yorks have endured public disgrace and private heartbreak. But what if the truth hasn't yet been told? What if the real story, the one hidden behind palace walls, is darker than anyone imagined? It's time to hear it all. No more silence. No more loyalty. Just raw, royal reckoning. The fall from grace. In a moment many thought would never come, King Charles III made history by formally stripping Prince Andrew of his remaining royal privileges. The statement from Buckingham Palace was brief. This is a necessary censure. Gone were the military titles, the last fragments of royal patronage, and most striking of all, the right to use the title His Royal Highness. From that day forward, he would be known in official records as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Equally shocking was the decision to terminate Andrew's lease on Royal Lodge, the grand 30-room residence he had occupied for 2 decades. Though the lease was originally set for a 75-year term beginning in 2003, the Crown exercised a legal clause to reclaim the property, citing reputational harm. Sources say Andrew was informed in person, with no negotiation permitted. His belongings were quietly removed, and the estate prepared for reassignment. The symbolic weight was enormous. Royal Lodge wasn't just a home, it was Andrew's final link to a family that had publicly cut ties. Christmas invitations stopped, royal communications excluded him, and staff were reassigned. One palace aide described it as total erasure. His new residence, a modest building on the Sandringham estate, is remote and largely out of public view. Not a punishment in name, but certainly in effect. Public reaction ranged from stunned approval to quiet sympathy. While many viewed the move as long overdue, others pointed to the emotional toll of removing a brother so completely from the family fold. But one thing was certain: Charles had acted not just as king, but as protector of the monarchy's battered reputation. And with Andrew's fall, the Crown hoped to turn the page. But the public hadn't forgotten how it began. Even with his titles gone and his home reclaimed, Prince Andrew remained at the center of a storm the monarchy couldn't outrun. The public's outrage wasn't rooted in formality. It came from a scandal so deep, so disturbing, that no palace statement could bury it. The name Jeffrey Epstein still echoed through newsrooms, courtrooms, and corridors of power. And at the heart of it all was Virginia Giuffre, the woman whose accusations changed royal history forever. The scandal that wouldn't die. Virginia Giuffre first came forward with her story nearly 2 decades ago, but her allegations against Prince Andrew still shake the monarchy to its core. She claimed she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and forced into sexual encounters with Andrew on 3 occasions. The most damning piece of evidence? A now infamous photo taken in London, showing Andrew with his arm around her waist, smiling next to Maxwell in 2001. In a widely reported legal settlement, Andrew paid a multi-million-pound sum to resolve Giuffre's civil lawsuit in the U.S. court system. The settlement included no admission of guilt, but Andrew publicly acknowledged that Giuffre had been a victim of abuse. For the public, it rang hollow. Many saw the payment as a de facto confession, especially given his previous denials and deflections. The silence from the palace only deepened the damage. Making matters worse was Andrew's widely mocked Pizza Express alibi, offered in an attempt to refute Giuffre's timeline. He claimed he was at a birthday party in Woking on the night in question. The absurd specificity became fodder for endless ridicule. Late-night television skewered the story. Social media turned it into satire. The phrase, "I was at Pizza Express," became shorthand for evasion and dishonesty. Further erosion came with a 2011 email, later leaked to the press, in which Andrew allegedly sought to gather background on Giuffre, an action that some interpreted as an attempt to discredit her. Though no charges were ever brought, the implication was clear. Andrew hadn't just been caught in a scandal. He may have tried to manage it from the shadows. And for a monarchy already fighting to preserve credibility, it was a devastating blow. Still, none of it compared to the moment the world saw him try to defend himself. Live, unfiltered, and disastrously unprepared. What began as a royal attempt at image rehabilitation turned into one of the most catastrophic interviews in modern television history. In a matter of minutes, Prince Andrew transformed from embattled royal into national embarrassment. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. And from that point on, the damage was irreversible. The BBC interview that destroyed a royal. In November 2019, the BBC's Newsnight program aired an exclusive interview with Prince Andrew, conducted by journalist Emily Maitlis. It was meant to be clarifying. It became infamous. Over the course of nearly 50 minutes, Andrew attempted to deny Giuffre's claims, defend his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and reframe himself as a victim of poor judgment. But his tone, detached, unempathetic, even smug, shocked the public and stunned seasoned royal observers. Two moments were instantly iconic and disastrous. First, Andrew claimed he couldn't have been sweating during one alleged encounter because he had a peculiar medical condition stemming from the Falklands War, preventing him from perspiring. Second, he described himself as being too honorable to end his friendship with Epstein without doing it face-to-face. To many, these were not just implausible. They were insulting. Twitter exploded. Headlines screamed. Within hours, the interview had gone viral. The consequences came fast. Major charities, including KPMG, Standard Chartered, and several universities, cut ties with Andrew. His advisors began resigning. Queen Elizabeth II, reportedly blindsided, summoned Andrew to a private meeting. Shortly afterward, he was instructed to step back from public duties for the foreseeable future. It was the first official royal demotion in modern memory, and the most visible. The interview is now considered a textbook case of public relations failure. What was intended as a defense became a confession in tone, if not in substance. Even today, palace staff refer to it simply as the interview, no further explanation needed. And for King Charles, it marked a turning point. From that day on, Andrew was no longer a royal asset. He was a royal liability. Behind closed doors. Though divorced since 1996, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson never truly separated. For years they shared royal lodge, raised their daughters under one roof, and presented a strange fusion of estranged loyalty and private dependency. While the palace tolerated their closeness, insiders whispered that Sarah had become Andrew's only defender within the royal inner circle, especially as the scandals escalated. Theirs wasn't a romance. It was survival, tethered by necessity. Their dynamic became even more controversial when it emerged that Sarah had accepted financial help from Jeffrey Epstein. In 2011, it was revealed that Epstein paid £15,000 to help settle one of her personal debts. Though Sarah later apologized, calling Epstein her supreme friend, the damage was done. Royal aides were horrified. Andrew had already been questioned for his friendship with Epstein. Sarah's involvement made the scandal look entrenched within the family. Still, she stayed. Despite being unwelcome at most public royal events, Sarah appeared at Windsor, photographed on horseback and attending family functions. Some claimed she provided emotional stability. Others believed she simply clung to the last threads of royal access. What's certain is that her presence complicated Andrew's fall. When palace advisors pushed to remove him from Royal Lodge, Sarah initially resisted. According to sources, she told friends, "This is our home. I won't be pushed out quietly." But eventually, the balance shifted. Sarah began spending less time at the lodge, focusing on personal projects, and staying in London more frequently. When she made the decision to move out permanently, it forced Andrew's hand. Without her, he had no buffer, no shield. And once she left, the lease revocation proceeded swiftly. What began as a shared exile ended as a quiet unraveling, a final break between the Yorks and the House of Windsor. But while Andrew and Sarah found themselves edged out of royal life, their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, faced a very different burden. Unlike their parents, they were born into titles they did not choose and scandals they did not cause. Yet public scrutiny did not spare them. As the media pounced on every resurfaced photo and social connection, the two sisters were forced to navigate a world where bloodlines came with guilt by association. Princesses in the crossfire. Beatrice and Eugenie had long straddled the line between private citizens and working royals. Though they held HRH status, they carried out few official engagements and relied heavily on private careers, Beatrice in finance, Eugenie in art and charity. Still, their father's disgrace cast a long shadow. Tabloids branded them tainted by association, and public sentiment grew colder. The pressure mounted with every headline, and the sisters' silence only fueled speculation. A resurfaced image from Beatrice's 18th birthday party, showing several guests linked to Jeffrey Epstein, reignited media fire. Though Beatrice denied any memory of Epstein's presence and emphasized she had no direct relationship with him, the damage was done. Meanwhile, emails surfaced hinting that the sisters had once visited New York shortly after Epstein's prison release in 2009. Again, there was denial. But the connections, however thin, kept drawing them into the scandal's orbit. Their retreat was gradual but deliberate. Beatrice began appearing less frequently at royal events, focusing on international investment projects and her young family. Eugenie, splitting her time between the UK and Portugal, emphasized charity work through her anti-slavery foundation, but even that drew scrutiny. Some critics questioned how someone so close to Andrew could speak credibly on human rights. Her defenders pushed back, but the perception stuck. Perhaps most painful of all was the growing physical and emotional distance from Windsor. The sisters' once regular visits to Royal Lodge diminished. After Sarah left and Andrew was forced out, the princesses rarely returned. The home that had been their sanctuary for decades was no longer theirs. Though they never publicly condemned their father, their separation spoke volumes. For Beatrice and Eugenie, royalty had become a minefield, and family, a quiet heartbreak. As their daughters withdrew from public life, Sarah Ferguson faced her own reckoning. With Andrew's fall came the collapse of the informal protection that had once shielded her. No longer a duchess, no longer tethered to royal grace, Sarah was forced to reckon with her past and the future she could no longer rely on. What followed was a slow descent into isolation, financial uncertainty, and a series of closed doors that once opened effortlessly in palace circles. Sarah Ferguson. With Andrew's public disgrace came the loss of Sarah's last title of significance, No longer Duchess of York, she quietly began using Ms. Sarah Ferguson in charity appearances and interviews. It was a rebranding by necessity, not choice. The palace did not issue a statement. There was no need. Her separation from the royal family had become self-evident. Her access was gone. Her standing dismantled. Her once thriving charity, Sarah's Trust, began to flounder. Calls to the organization went unanswered. Its social media pages went dormant, and donors vanished. Inquiries about funding, especially connections to past Epstein-linked patrons, led many partners to cut ties or freeze cooperation. Publishers, too, pulled back. Her children's book series, once in development with a major house, was postponed indefinitely. One editor admitted, "There's too much heat around her name." The resurfacing of her 2011 comment describing Epstein as her supreme friend haunted her attempts to regain public sympathy. Though she had apologized publicly, the quote lived on, replayed in documentaries, reposted in headlines, and cited in criticism. Her explanations, often vague or contradictory, only deepened mistrust. The public saw her not just as complicit in Andrew's world, but as someone who benefited from it. By the time she left Royal Lodge, Sarah had no clear residence. Friends said she was staying intermittently in London, living quietly and exploring options abroad. Her days of royal galas and high-profile charity events were over. Now she was navigating a life without a title, a home, or a platform. And for someone who had once been center stage beside a prince and best friends with Princess Diana, the fall was as symbolic as it was devastating. Secrets from the shadows. Even after his public fall, Prince Andrew worked behind the scenes to control the narrative. One of the most damning leaks came from a 2011 email in which Andrew wrote to an aide, "We are in this together." The recipient? Jeffrey Epstein. Though Andrew had claimed they severed ties in 2010, the timestamp proved otherwise. This contradiction reignited calls for full disclosure, yet the palace remained silent. More damaging testimony resurfaced from Johanna Sjoberg, a former Epstein employee who alleged that Andrew had groped her at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. Her account matched elements in Virginia Giuffre's statements, raising chilling consistencies. Meanwhile, flight logs placed Andrew on Epstein's private jet, traveling to the U.S. during the timeframes Giuffre had cited. Though Andrew's legal team dismissed the logs as circumstantial, public trust eroded further. Perhaps most disturbing was testimony from a witness who claimed to have seen Andrew receiving a massage from 2 Russian women at Epstein's property. The session reportedly took place during a 2001 New York visit, when multiple victims say abuse occurred. Andrew denied all involvement, but with every revelation, his credibility crumbled. What once might have been overlooked was now treated as part of a deliberate cover-up. Calls grew louder to reopen formal inquiries. Some legal experts questioned whether Andrew had perjured himself in previous statements. Others pointed to the lack of criminal charges and accused the palace of protecting one of its own. What was clear, however, was that Andrew hadn't just stumbled into scandal. He had tried to outmaneuver it. And when the truth began to surface, it was too late to regain control. As the evidence piled up, the royal family faced a pivotal choice: protect Andrew or preserve the monarchy. For the firm, it wasn't just about a brother. It was about the survival of the institution. Behind palace walls, decisions were made swiftly and strategically. A quiet but deliberate effort began, one designed to erase Andrew from royal life entirely. No ceremony, no farewell, just a systematic disappearance from view. Royal reputation at risk. In early 2022, Queen Elizabeth II took a rare public step by revoking Prince Andrew's military affiliations and ordering he cease using the HRH title. It was her final act of containment, a protective measure meant to spare the crown more shame. Her death months later shifted the burden of cleanup to King Charles, who took a far more aggressive stance. Within weeks, Andrew was removed from nearly every official record. Charles didn't wait for parliamentary procedure. Using royal prerogative, he authorized the issuance of royal warrants, removing Andrew from the Councillors of State list and other constitutional designations. It was swift, legal, and final. Andrew was no longer just disgraced. He was erased. Even palace websites were updated. His biography shortened. His photos removed from official displays. In the royal court, there was no trace left of the Queen's once favorite son. Prince William had long pushed for such measures behind closed doors. Multiple aides confirmed that William refused to appear alongside Andrew in public from 2021 onward, believing his presence undermined the monarchy's integrity. Behind the scenes, he and Catherine focused on modernizing their image, young, scandal-free, and publicly accountable. Andrew was incompatible with that mission. His exclusion became a symbol of generational change. While the public applauded the firm's firm hand, others saw the moves as self-preservation cloaked in justice. There were no televised statements, no family appearances, opportunity for Andrew to defend himself. His final appearances were limited to short glimpses behind car windows, far from microphones. In the monarchy's grand playbook, he had been redacted without apology. Yet behind every silent exile is a trail of financial decisions, and in Andrew's case, the money spoke volumes. The public began asking hard questions. If Andrew had no job, how did he pay a £12 million settlement? If he was exiled, why was he still living on royal estates? As more documents surfaced, the picture became clearer and more controversial. The monarchy hadn't just cut Andrew loose. It had quietly funded the very silence that protected it. The cost of silence. When Prince Andrew settled Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit, the official line was that he had used personal funds, but scrutiny over his finances told a murkier story. Without a formal income and long divorced, Andrew's ability to pay £12 million sparked speculation. Reports indicated that King Charles may have contributed privately, leading to questions about whether taxpayer-backed sovereign funds had indirectly supported the deal. In parallel, the lease Andrew held on Royal Lodge became a flashpoint. He had paid £1 million upfront in 2003, but his annual rent was reportedly just £250 per week, a rate far below market value. When the lease was revoked, it emerged that Charles had funded Andrew's relocation to a Sandringham property, with all costs covered by the Duchy of Lancaster estate. Though technically legal, the optics were dire. Sarah Ferguson's movements also drew attention. After leaving Royal Lodge, she quietly sold a flat in Belgravia, one previously rumored to have been acquired with assistance from foreign investors linked to Andrew's associates. While no wrongdoing was proven, the proximity to scandal made every transaction suspicious. Her earnings from publishing and speaking dried up almost overnight. Public trust in royal finances dipped to historic lows. Polls showed that 68% of Britons believed the monarchy should publish detailed spending reports tied to personal settlements. Transparency, once a quiet request, became a demand. And though Andrew no longer held formal power, the financial fallout of his disgrace now threatened the very institution trying to bury him. By the time the royal family sealed Andrew's exile, questions turned to the future. Could the monarchy survive this stain? Would Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie ever regain public trust? Would Andrew speak out or remain buried in silence? Inside palace walls, the priority was image restoration. But outside, the damage had been done. What came next wouldn't be decided by titles or blood, but by public opinion, memory, and the ghost of a scandal the crown could never fully erase. What comes next? The royal family has entered a new phase, one where scandal management is part of survival. While King Charles III works to define his reign with reform and responsibility, Prince Andrew's exile looms like a shadow. Though officially removed from duties and residences, he remains the Duke of York in name, a title that some say should be revoked. For now, it remains untouched, a lingering echo of a legacy undone. Beatrice and Eugenie, though absent from the scandal directly, have paid a heavy price. Royal watchers note their diminishing public roles, their cautious charity work, and their absence from official portraits. They are not disgraced, but they are sidelined, treated as reminders of a crisis the family would rather forget. Despite no wrongdoing of their own, they bear the burden of a name no longer welcomed in full. Rumors continue to swirl about memoirs, interviews, and unseen documents. Both Andrew and Sarah are said to have drafted personal reflections, though neither has published them. The unspoken agreement between the palace and its exiles is simple: remain silent or be cut off completely. So far, silence has prevailed, but resentment simmers. One misstep, one leak, and the carefully rebuilt image could collapse again. What's left is a monarchy trying to redefine itself, leaner, more modern, more moral. But the Prince Andrew scandal has left scars that no press release can heal. For the British public, it is a reminder that even the most gilded institutions can rot from within. And for the firm, it's a cautionary tale of what happens when loyalty is placed above accountability and silence is bought at an unspeakable cost. What began as a scandal became an unraveling. And now Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson are no longer just disgraced royals. They're living symbols of what happens when the monarchy tries to silence its own. Stripped of homes, titles, and public favor, they have been exiled not only from royal corridors, but from the narrative itself. But they haven't disappeared. They've watched from the shadows as the firm rebranded, as Camilla rose, and as King Charles redrew the royal map with ruthless efficiency. And behind that silence is resentment and memory. Andrew, once the Queen's favorite, now speaks only through whispers, leaked emails, ghost-written stories, private memoirs that may never see daylight. Sarah, once the Duchess of York, now watches her name fade from book deals and charity boards. Yet both still hold secrets. Secrets from Diana's era, secrets about the Epstein years, and secrets about what it's really like to fall from royal grace. For the public, the question is no longer just, what did they do? It's, what did everyone else know? What did the crown allow? What did it hide? And what happens if Andrew and Sarah decide to speak, not in coded quotes or polished interviews, but in full? Because when those who've been cast out have nothing left to lose, they often gain the one thing they were always denied: a voice. And that voice might just shatter the palace's carefully polished silence for good.